This and every podcast is brought to you by Claypot. And Claypot is a restaurant, a Cantonese-style restaurant in New York City. It's located at 58 St. Mark's Place. Totally recommend you go check it out. It's owned and operated by one of my closest friends. I really consider him to be a brother of mine. And the mission statement of that establishment is really to just bridge the generational gap culturally through food, and that's in itself really beautiful. And also, I've heard from another friend, this is not as delicious or positive as food, but needs to be said. And my friend is in Puerto Rico, and he's brought to my attention that it's still suffering. The society is still suffering from the aftermath of the hurricane. And unfortunately, a lot of the links that you click on to donate money or to give to charities and stuff are hoaxes, unfortunately. And I mean, it's heartbreaking, obviously, but what he recommended we do is to really engage in tourism. So if you're thinking of taking a vacation, definitely think about Puerto Rico. Know that when you're going there and you're, getting drunk and having cheer and eating good food and hanging out with your friends and family, that you're at least also pumping some money back into a society that, really could use it. So definitely keep that in mind. Do what you can to help. And this podcast is actually with my roommate and very good friend, Josh. And what do we talk about? Wow. It's a little bit all over the place. But I hope you enjoy it. And I think it hits some vein of meaning that you can take away from this conversation. Hopefully use that in your life.
Policing of language, not taking millennials seriously because they say the word like or have a certain speech pattern. It's the same as like if you're from an area and maybe you're struggling, English isn't your first language, and you're like struggling to articulate something in English that you understand in your native language, and then people sort of twisting that and being like, oh, you don't really know what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's something to watch out for, definitely.
Well, it's definitely difficult when you don't have like the associations with certain words, right? Like sometimes some words are synonyms, but one of them is like used pejoratively. You don't know that, and it gets confusing. But I definitely agree with you. So that's one of the things that I was trying to focus on like how to have a really good, meaningful conversation is like I focused all of 2018 to just like shutting up and just listening, because I had no idea how to listen, because you just end up butting ideas. It's like, oh, I think this. Oh, no, I think this. And no, you're wrong, it's this. It's not like I kind of took a back seat on most of my conversations and kind of just like, all right, why do you think that? Okay. But what if it's like this? Do you think it's like this? Maybe it's like this, man. I don't know, man. I'm asking you. And it's a lot better. And you can feel the person like, by doing that, I feel like I've been able to draw out more, and because they're forced to explain it more, they re-solidify their ideas, and maybe it like hashes away some of the dead wood. Maybe it like it conceptualizes itself in more of a concrete idea, and they're like, oh, well, I've been saying this all my life, but I actually didn't mean that. Like once I actually talked it through, I actually meant this. And that's so cool, and that I get so much out of that.
People are able to solidify their ideas when they talk through them, and you're right. I think there are definitely a lot of people that have a hard time listening. I don't know if I told you this, but this past week I was like, I walked into a Dunkin' Donuts to just because I was going somewhere and I needed to get directions on my phone, and I just like sat down, and I don't like texting much. You know that about me. I'm much more a person who likes to communicate with people face to face, and I don't use my phone. I mean, I use my phone for what I need to use it for, but I'd rather talk to someone, in person than have a conversation through text. But I happened to be responding to a text in this moment. I sat down at a table, and these two older gentlemen next to me just sort of greeted me like, "Hey," and I thought that he might have been talking to his friend, and he goes, "Hey," and I like looked over, and this guy with like longer gray hair and this very pointed, like, well, it wasn't pointed, but it was very like clean lined goatee is looking at me, and he goes, "Yeah, you were so busy looking at your phone, answering your text, you didn't even hear me saying that to you." And he started, and I said, that's kind of funny. Hi, how's it going? And he and his friend went on for the next essentially 10 minutes telling me how, kids these days, they're so involved in their phones that they don't see what's going on outside of them, and they don't listen to each other anymore, and people aren't able to communicate. And I was trying to listen to what this guy had to say, and every time I started to respond to a question that he asked me, he would tell me what I was thinking and continue to like tell me why the way I was living my life was wrong. And it was like, that's interesting. And I would hear he would make a point of like, these iPhones are so dangerous, and they're just only designed to last a year. That phone, you probably got it this year, and you're going to need to get a new one next year. And I said, yeah, actually, that's interesting. A few weeks ago, I was going to tell him about how, whatever.
Yeah, your phone is
always totally
wrecked.
fucked up. And, like, I had to, like, trade it into Apple and, like, have this whole problem. And I was going to share with him about, apparently, that there's this, like, series of iPhones that had a malfunction, and they had to replace a bunch of them. And how I'm now working with an iPhone 6, but he was so concerned with telling me why my new iPhone 10 was like the problem with my generation. And he's talking to someone who I love interacting and engaging. And I tried to shut up and listen, and they literally didn't stop talking for like 20 minutes. And I at this point I was literally just being attacked. And his friend was just like, "And I bet you don't know what the first touchscreen phone was." And I said, "Well, actually, my father had a Palm Pilot back then. I helped create the Palm Pilot." And
God.
It was just like very obviously disillusioned older generation that like they were able to turn me into like the straw man of what their problem with millennials was. And it didn't matter what I was that I was listening to them and that I wanted to engage with them. They were just pinning all of their issues on me. And at one point I was like, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I would love to hear more about this, but I've got somewhere I need to be right now. And I do need to, texting is useful for communicating with people who are in a situation where they necessarily can't talk on the phone. And unfortunately I've got to go meet some friends right now, but it was good hearing you." And I could tell that they wanted to be heard. And I tried to give that to them, but they were so intent on reducing whatever. It didn't matter what my actual experience was. It was they were going to reduce me into this idea of what a millennial is, and that's the way the conversation was going to go.
Yeah,
it was, and they were lecturing me about listening, and it was like, wow, this is really interesting.
This is really interesting.
Yeah.
But no, that's definitely like what we had talked about before. It definitely aligns with that. How it's dangerous to see people as caricatures of some aspect of their identity, whether that's their job or whether that's their age or whether that's their race even. It's just like if you see somebody and you think, "Oh, well, I got you figured out. I got you boxed in." And I think that's so unbelievably wrong. Right? It's so unbelievably wrong.
I think that's why questions are a lot more useful than like statements. Like, "Oh, you do this because..." Oh, fuck that.
Yeah. It's a lot more useful. Why do you do this?
Yeah.
Or
why do you think that is?
That's the big question.
Yeah, and that's a hard one.
I think the biggest questions that I've been asking myself...
Why do you do the things you do?
Yeah. Why does this happen? And then when you understand why, it's what can be done about it.
Yeah.
That's the big one, Especially when you...
it feels like rock bottom almost.
Yeah.
It feels like when you've hit bedrock, it's like, what do you do about that?
And it's just like, oh, this is the way it is. We're just gonna.
That's nihilism, man. That's nihilism.
That's rough. I think that's the big, like, for me, that's the life-changing question is what can be done about it. Because it's the only question that asks, like, when you're faced at that wall or at that, like, rock bottom, that implies you can do something about it, right? It kind of empowers you in a way. It's like, what can you do about it? Oh, life is, like, tragic. What can you do about it? What areas can you fix? Oh, so questions are definitely way more important than answers. Wow, I never thought I would say that. That's wild. There's just a lot going on in my head, man.
Yeah, that's good.
But everything feels like it's coming together, and we're still relatively young. We're still trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, well, we've reached the bedrock within ourselves in theory. Maybe
In theory.
There's probably still more to go, but it's like how does, after you've descended to the underworld and started to come back up, like how do you bring that to the rest of the world? I mean, that's what we've been talking about, like, and that's what you want to do with podcasts, right? That's what you want to do with like creating this conversation when people are able to listen.
And that's what you would love to do through storytelling.
Storytelling.
I wouldn't even say acting. I would say story.
It is acting is the selfish version of it. Acting is the like, I get to experience it, and I love experiencing it. But I think the reason why I love dungeon mastering so much is because I kind of force other people to encounter themselves in a way that is out of the ordinary for a lot of people. For actors, it's pretty ordinary. It's pretty much like doing an improvisation and like taking action. But a lot of people, like we were saying earlier, a lot of people tend to live their lives in a passive mode, in a very like,
it's passive nihilism, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, yikes.
But it does force a little bit of a call to action. And it's not in a way that's aggressive, but in a way that is inviting, that's exciting. That like, we are participating in an adventure here. But the only way that you take it is if you take the steps. It's like you choose to engage. If you choose to, you're presented with a cave in front of you. If you want to like dive to the bottom of the pool at the bottom, or if you're gonna like try to interpret some like hieroglyphs on a wall, or like take a torch and like go into and like look around the corners of the dungeons to try to find something that you didn't see before necessarily. I mean, it forces you to be creative and come up with solutions, and that's what can be done about it. It's like that's what we do a lot in studio classes, is in acting, and where we take risks. You're always told to take big risks, like fail, but fail big, like just do something. You know what I mean? It's so easy to just like read text off of a piece of paper, but all you're doing is reading text off of a piece of paper. When you're a human being in this heightened scenario that is drama, that is a story, because we don't make stories about stasis, about things staying the same. We make stories about people or times of great change, and the stakes are usually, when it's good, it's usually like life and death. And we want to see people doing something and not just like sitting in the same spot and not changing at all. And so that's why it's, try something big, and not necessarily like, if you're on screen, the intent is big. Yeah. The actual execution might be more precise and more internal, but what it is you're trying to do is still, it has to be very important to you, and it has to, taking action and trying out different actions. There's this book called Actions, an Actor's Thesaurus, and it's literally just a list of verbs. And the idea is to, let's say the line I have is, let's say my line is, excuse me, you were being nice to me. So my line is, excuse me, you are being nice to me. There is a series of verbs, say, to accuse, to punch, to paint, to glorify, to mystify, to enrage, to empower, to dig at someone. And what essentially this does is we try to imbue this line of text, excuse me, you were being nice to me, with an action that feels appropriate to what it is this character is doing to the other person in this moment. And these verbs always have to be transitive. So, I, Josh, blank this verb, you, Stefan. So I am doing what to you? I am empowering you. I am subverting you. I am cutting you. I am drawing you in. All of these things that are trying to elicit an actual combination of a physical, but it's more than physical. It's an energy. It's about the energy of what you are doing to the other person. And then what the other person does in response to you is their action. And you want to do this in a way that feels both like organic and human, and also is enough to get the other person to respond. So it's like that sort of like that tennising back and forth of energy. And when I do that as an actor, I love doing that. That's my selfish version of playing that give and take of life force. But D&D is kind of like my way of creating a world for people to do that for each other. And what I do as a good dungeon master is create situations in which I can draw out strong, powerful, empowering, I would say. I want to empower my players. If I'm doing an action as a DM, I am empowering my players to take action in my world.
Wow. That's loaded. That's a lot of responsibility in your verbs.
Yeah.
But I totally get that. And I would even argue that, at least my experience, I mean, obviously I don't play Dungeons and Dragons that much, but that like some people are more willing to take action in the game than in real life. And that's...
D&D is being used a lot in therapy for children with anxiety, with social anxiety.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Because it is an inherent social game. You know, you're at the table with people, and your dungeon master, you're going to have to talk to people. You're going to have to engage, and you don't necessarily have to respond in character and say, "My name is Petronius Lionheart III, and I am an orc paladin, and I am here at this village to inquire about a missing person. Have you seen the blacksmith's daughter?" You don't have to do that. But you can be like, I go up to the innkeeper and I ask if he's seen the blacksmith's daughter anywhere. That's you taking action.
Yeah.
And then the person will respond. Over time, you might get more comfortable with that. And you might say, I was wondering, you don't have to do a stupid character voice because not everyone is comfortable doing that. But you might say, I wanted to know if you've seen the blacksmith's daughter anywhere. You know, roll a persuasion check or whatever. But it's still, over time, you get used to these, they're simulated interactions, but then you have to actually cooperate with your players at the table, because you're all a part of the group, you're all a part of the party, and the party is the most important thing. With the party, there's a reason why don't split the party.
Yeah.
Is a really common thing to say. That being said, it can create for some really interesting narrative. But that's only after the party is well established. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Splitting the party only has a serious effect if the party is that. It needs to be a group first. It needs to be a team effort, so that when it is split, it's a little bit different, and that dynamic. You could play with that split team, which makes for good narrative, which is how we learn. That's how I learn. I learn through narrative. I learn through storytelling and through narrative.
Well, I definitely think everybody has some kind of utility out of storytelling.
Yeah. I think people do get different things from it, though. I think for some people, a story is more about the moral. For some people, it's more about the character. For some people, it's more about the world in which it takes place in.
What do you get out of it?
I think I appreciate all of those to some degree.
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean...
I was hoping for that answer.
Because the personal is really important to me.
Yeah.
That's what... I think that's the actor part of me. Is the human journey. That's the part of me that is a romantic and loves people, which I don't want to get all sappy right now.
No, it's awesome.
But
it's genuine.
You can see where that's happening in my life right now.
Yeah.
That's in the good friendships that I have with you, and but just good genuine connections with people.
Yeah.
And
well, it definitely feels like you've definitely over the last 2-3 months, I feel like you've definitely kind of nested yourself in this really high resonating kind of like you just seem like you're in your flow state, you know, for like the past few months. Like everything kind of like clicked and like locked in together. And yeah, sure, there's some obstacles that pop up or something that like you thought you wanted to do but maybe you don't want to do, you know, like there's a lot of internal kind of decisions and struggles. But it's like, okay, I've ridden this wave before, I've done this kind of journey to the underground, to like the underworld. I can handle this, right?
Yeah.
Like you can, like you know, there's more coming, right? It's because
Yeah.
ultimately it's Sisyphus, right? It's up
Yeah.
and down, up and down.
Always.
But that's, interestingly enough, I don't think Sisyphus is necessarily like going to be a zigzag like this, where it's like an M shape, but it's more of a ladder. Yeah, and ladder, and that's where you piece yourself together and become greater than you are now. So, I'm excited. I'm excited. Yes.
Spiral.
Yeah.
Spiral. I think for me it's a spiral.
I mean,
'Cause a lot of the times I'll encounter the same problems, like, you know, so, I mean, this won't work at a podcast,
No, you
but
can
visual
start, yeah.
medium. So let's say, you know, there's the pillar of life,
mhm.
and I start at the bottom, and I'm working my way up towards something, and
Yeah, so you're
I have a
wrapping
problem
around the
here.
pillar.
I have a problem here, and I encounter the same problem here that I encountered down here, but I have more experience now.
Mhm.
I'm better equipped to deal with it. So I might be encountering similar things. However, I'm at a different place in my journey upwards. If I'm on a journey upwards, there is such thing as a downward spiral.
Yeah, but but I think that's important
but-
that you pointed that out, that there is like an upward spiral that people
Yeah.
don't often talk about.
Yeah.
And it's totally a real thing. It's like when you like suck shit at starting a new sport or a hobby or a craft or something, and like suddenly it like clicks and you like make your first milestone and you're like, yeah, look at all the hard work I put in. Look, this is my 200
Yeah.
hours of my
Yeah.
dues.
I think. Oh. Where do you see that spiral, like that image, take effect in like modern culture? Do you think that image is present?
Like an upward spiral.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, what is the name of the staff that's like the medical staff with the
Oh, the
snakes?
twin serpents.
Yeah,
I don't know
think
if that's
what that is?
necessarily-
I don't know if it's that.
I don't think that's necessarily spiraling upwards.
Is that like a stairway to heaven? Is that like a
It could be.
like an ascent into the clouds kind of thing?
Maybe.
A tower? What is that? What is that?
You're so interested in that, in towers.
Towers are phallic as fuck.
Yeah, they are. I mean, we erect pillars, right? Like, it's not really a hidden thing.
That's true.
Yeah. It's like Game of Thrones. Maybe it is all just about dicks.
What is the like the architectural vagina? Is it like a cove?
A cave?
Kind of like an inner sanctum sort of thing?
Maybe.
Like a bowl? Concave, convex?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely worth thinking about.
Yeah. I'm very interested to see how there's going to be more of the feminine.
Auditoriums are not necessarily shaped like a vagina, but are crevices essentially.
Mhm.
You know, they're like this. You know, and the Greeks had their theaters. Their seats were like built into the sides of a hill, a mountain.
Yeah.
And then the stage, the playing space, is there at the bottom. You know, you're looking down upon it. I don't know.
I think that's more of a focus thing, though.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
It's like gearing your attention towards.
But it's like a circle too. It's like a.
Well, it could be, you know, either half, right, or it could be like a full circle.
Yeah.
Aimed towards a specific platform. But I mean, that's still standard.
I'm
now.
thinking of you know, memorials too that are inlaid into the ground. The 9/11 memorial. Have you seen that?
I think I have.
In New York, it's a giant, like, square, like rectangular hole in the ground with this like water, I think, playing over the sides. I don't want to say I don't want to say like and describe it in the wrong way, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that there's water, if I remember correctly, that like cascades down the sides, and it's this deep like black obsidian. It's a striking image. It's like it's the lack of, it's playing with something that isn't there, but very clearly isn't there, like
Yeah.
negative space. It's kind of it's crazy.
Is it obsidian? Is it actually
I
obsidian?
don't know if it's obsidian, but it's reflective black material.
Yeah, because like obsidian is like the volcanic rock, and that's generally associated with.
I don't know if it's obsidian. I would say it's like that sort of color.
Okay. Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Negative space.
Although I don't know if that's right, because if we're talking about if pillars are penises,
Pillars are penises.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that was quite a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. I like.
More negative space.
Yeah.
Rabbit hole. More negative space.
Yeah, rabbit holes are negative space.
Rabbit holes are kind of like down the rabbit hole. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Was down the rabbit hole a thing before Alice in Wonderland?
That's what I was wondering too. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm not sure. Or maybe it was something
because it
else
leads to another world.
It does.
It's essentially it's a portal to another.
And it's unassuming. That's the
dimension.
other thing. It's not like a giant vortex. It's something. It's a rabbit hole.
Well, it's finding the otherworldly in the mundane world. I mean, that's what Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe is, right? They're transported to a new world. That's what Alice is. She just like falls down and then suddenly she's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's usually in nature in some way, though. Dante's Inferno, he's wandering in the woods and he finds himself lost. In the woods,
Yeah. I'm just thinking of Over the Garden Wall.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It's like it is absolutely the modern.
Dante's
Because
Inferno.
you don't need to know that it's the Inferno for that show to be impactful. Like I showed it to my friend, and she loved it, and she didn't get the symbolism at first. And I had her finish it, and I was like, "Remind you of anything?" She's like, "No, but it was really cool," and I was like, "Have you ever read the Inferno?" And she's like, and I saw it happen on her face.
Oh man, the click.
And it was oh, I love those moments. I love not giving, but like introducing people, I love giving people like experiences that feel useful and beneficial and like help them on the journey that they're on.
Yeah.
That feels that's a great feeling to like show a person a movie or introduce them to an idea that you're reading about or engage in a story with them that they can get really excited about because it pertains to what they're doing in their life at that moment.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Their little journey that they're on.
It's something that's like common across all people that we just kind of understand.
But doesn't it feel good to like share good stories with people, man?
I don't know. Stories are always good. Either whether you're delivering it or whether you're on the receiving end, it's always a good experience.
Yeah. As the storyteller, I certainly learn a lot.
Well, what do you learn out of
through the story?
Yeah.
Well, because when you're working on a play for a certain amount of time, you really get to explore the world of it and like what it means to inhabit this person, and you learn about other people and yourself by learning about what this person is going through. Because usually you have to undertake these large experiences. Like I just played a man who left his very, very religious man, very close to God, and he was a Hasidic Jew, so his faith is extremely, and his culture is extremely important to him.
Mm-hmm.
And his family is extremely important to him, and he left his home village in this country in Eastern Europe because his people were facing persecution, and there's not a lot of context of why Mr. Marx came to New York, but I know it's for his family.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to come up with this essentially backstory for myself that motivated most of what I was doing. And so in the interaction that is written into the play, which is this strong tension between this like obvious love for this African American woman, Esther, and the tragedy that, you know, it is his duty to his family and to his way of life that he is going to marry this woman that is back in his home country. Mm-hmm. But he's an artist as well. He has this beautiful appreciation for fabric, and what he does is he like finds fabric, and he connects to the texture and the make of these things, and he provides them to Esther, who is this woman who comes to his fabric shop because she's a seamstress. And what she does is she turns this material into beautiful, essentially, the place called intimate apparel. She turns it into intimate apparel, you know, lingerie essentially for women. And he's not able, as a Hasidic Jewish man, he's not able to touch someone like a woman that is not his wife or his relative. Mm-hmm. But the way he connects intimately with Esther is that they both experience this fabric, that they both like touch and feel like the delicacy and the intricacy and the detail of the thing that he loves and appreciates, and that he gives to her, that she turns into art, essentially.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about the ways in which I intimately connect to other people through basically living this other man's life. And I mean, and when you're for me, I'll say I'll say I because I don't want to put my experience as an actor on other people. What I do when I play a character is I need to find, there are obviously going to be some differences. I'm not 35. This man's supposed to be 35. Mm-hmm. And I'm not from Romania, but I can find similarities to him and really find what those similarities are. And then in the ways that I'm different, how different is that? Because I can understand an abstraction of that, mm-hmm. and use that abstraction to connect it to my life. Because there's an abstraction, that abstraction of, you know, moving from a land that is not your own into a new place where you don't understand the language initially or necessarily the way of life. You know, I've never moved from another country, but I certainly did move from a small town to a city. And I went from a place that had, you know, where I was one of the largest minorities because I was half Jewish in high school, to a place crazy, right? Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
To a place where there's people from more different walks of life, and like you can relate things, and as a result of exploring that, what it means to be that person over an extended amount of time and living these very like high stakes moments in their life night after night after night, and like doing these activities that explore how they walk, how they breathe, how they live in the world, what their like different ways to respond to the people in their lives in different ways, that like you stretch your capability for humanity essentially.
Yeah, it sounds like it's definitely all you do is exercise the ability to like really sink and ingratiate yourself into like that role or that character.
Yeah.
And really just,
and so as a result you become I become a vaster human. I realize what I am capable of, like the extremes of what I am capable of.
Yes, that's self-discovery, man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's fun.
That's why it's so, I mean, it can be really rewarding.
It's also terrifying.
Yeah,
because there's definitely some aspects that you reach, you're like, oh god, oh, I could do this.
There are plays that are really hard to do, but then there are also some actors who just like throwing on a costume and like, you know, sing a song, and that's fine too. That's to each their own.
Yeah. But not for you.
I think it should all serve each other. I think, you know, there are a lot of people who are in like acting programs who will look at musical theater and think like, oh, that's shallow. I think that's an absolute mistake. I think musical theater, the music in a good musical is used to express something that can't necessarily be said in just words. It's like, you need so badly to communicate something that experiences in that moment that text can't do it anymore. And music, you know, it's such an welling up of extreme content.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's like some kind of like it's like that abstraction that's like really difficult to like articulate in the world, that can't really be done outside of music, because music is just one of those weird things that I would argue gives people a religious experience.
Yeah. You know what music makes me think of? Music makes me think of the dragon that like lives underneath the world, like in the chaos, that gives birth to everything. Like the energy of the universe, the fountain that like provides inspiration into the world. There's a word for that in the hero's journey. I think it's the world navel. I think it's the world navel. It's like the point from which all like energy like spouts from. It's like pure chaos.
Yeah.
But it can. That's what music makes me think of, because it is form.
Yeah.
But it's
there is some
it's so true. But it's like no one can. I don't know if anyone can say it. I certainly couldn't say it. You can say what it evokes for you.
Yeah.
But good music evokes something from people, and it can evoke different things. I don't know. That's incredible.
I know. I love music. I put music as like one of the top, if not the top, forms of art, just because it like you said, it does have like that chaotic element to it.
Yeah.
Where it's
close to the primordial. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's close to the Dionysian. It's less of the Apollonian. Well, I mean, you need the Apollonian.
Harmony.
You need the form to create it. But what it evokes is like pure, oftentimes, just like energy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Visceral energy, whether that's good or bad, but like strong things.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes I'll watch a movie that's like, oh, that was cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Or looking at a piece of art. I mean, I guess ideally any story, any art does that. Uses form to evoke content from the viewer.